I was sitting across from this young couple back in 2007. They'd just signed. Biggest smiles I'd seen. And I'd been doing this a long time at that point. Frank Mitchell, by the way. Retired broker. 32 years. I'll get back to that in a second. 3 months after they signed, they called me, crying. Turns out their broker never told them that seller had listed that house 4 times in 2 years. 4 times. Different buyers walked every single time, and nobody said a word to them. Not one person. That's not bad luck. That's what happens when you don't know what to ask. Look, you're about to make the biggest financial decision of your life. We're not talking about a car here. We're talking about something that will follow you for 30 years. And most buyers, most of them, never ask their broker a single hard question. Not because they're not smart. Nobody ever told them which questions actually matter. I watched a 34-year-old nurse in Phoenix do this in 2019. She'd saved for years, put down $22,000, asked 0 hard questions, and she found out at the closing table, that her broker was representing both her and the seller at the same time. She had no idea that was even legal. She signed anyway, too far in to walk away. She lost her entire negotiating position on a $300,000 home. That's the difference between asking the right questions and not asking them. $200,000 in equity, or $40,000 gone in year 1. Now, before I give you all 5 questions, I want you to do one thing. Keep count of how many of these you've already asked your broker. I'll tell you what your number means at the end. And hey, drop a comment if your broker has ever made you feel like asking questions was slowing things down. Because I'm genuinely curious how many of you have felt that pressure, that feeling of being a burden for asking. That's exactly what I want to get into first. Let me show you something nobody explained to me when I first got my license. And I promise you, nobody's explained it to you either. Your broker doesn't get paid when you make a good decision. Your broker gets paid when the deal closes. That's it. That's the whole thing. Sit with that for a second. Doesn't matter if you bought the right house. Doesn't matter if you overpaid by $30,000. Doesn't matter if there was a better property 2 streets over that would have saved you 15 grand. The moment that deal closes, your broker gets paid. The moment it falls apart, they get nothing. Now think about what that does to a person. Even a good person. Even someone who genuinely likes you. They're sitting across from you. You're hesitating. You're asking hard questions. And every question you ask is one more chance for this whole thing to unravel. That's the trap. And you walked into it the moment you got pre-approved. Here's something else. That term, buyer's agent, sounds like it means they work for you, exclusively, loyally, like a lawyer works for their client. It doesn't mean that. In 23 states, something called dual agency is completely legal. That means your broker, the person you think is on your side, can legally represent both you and the seller at the exact same time. Both sides. One broker, one commission check. In that situation, your broker isn't your advocate. They're a transaction coordinator with a financial interest in keeping both parties happy enough to sign. Think about what that means at the negotiation table. You want to push back on price. The seller wants full ask. Your broker is standing right in the middle and getting paid by both of you. Who do you think wins that negotiation? Let me give you the real number so this stops feeling like theory. On a $350,000 home, very normal price in most American markets right now, the buyer's side commission is roughly 3%. That's $10,500. 10,500 reasons to close this deal fast. Not to slow down, not to encourage your questions, not to suggest you walk away, even when walking away is absolutely the right move. $10,500 sitting on that table. Gone the moment you say, I don't think this is the right house. Let me tell you what this actually looks like. Couple in suburban Atlanta, both working, young kids, first home. Their broker was one of the most likable guys I ever saw in this business. Responsive, confident, always had an answer, and I mean always. The kind of guy you want sitting next to you. What they didn't know, he'd already shown that exact house to 6 different buyers. 6. Every single one had walked away. He never mentioned that, not once. When they finally sat down and asked him directly, "Is there anything we should know about this property?" You know what he said? "It's a great house." Technically not a lie, completely dishonest. And that's a distinction this industry is very comfortable with. They bought it. They were thrilled. Year 2, drainage issue underneath the crawl space. The kind of thing 6 buyers had probably already been warned about by their own inspectors before they walked. $18,000 to fix it. Money they didn't have. Money they put on a credit card. That broker knew. He always knew. Now, the pressure you feel during this process, I want to name it. The moment you get pre-approved, a clock starts. I call it the commission clock. and your broker can feel it ticking even when you can't. That's where the language comes from. There are 2 other offers on this property. This market moves fast. I'd hate for you to lose this one. Every one of those phrases is a clock management tool, not outright lies, but they're designed to move you forward, past your hesitation, past your questions, past the moment where you might actually slow down and think. I watched that language work thousands of times over 30 years, and I watched buyers who ignored it, buyers who stopped, asked the hard questions, and either got a better deal or walked away from the wrong house entirely. The difference wasn't luck. It was 5 questions. And the first one, the one most buyers never even think to ask, I'm giving it to you right now. 5 questions. That's all that stands between you and everything I just described. Not a lawyer, not a real estate course, not 3 months on Zillow. 5 questions, asked out loud, to your broker, before you're emotionally attached to anything. Because here's what I learned in 30 years. The moment you fall in love with a house, you stop asking questions. You start justifying. You start finding reasons it'll be fine. That's exactly when you're most dangerous to yourself. So ask these before you walk through a single door. Question 1. Are you representing the seller in any capacity on this transaction? 11 words. That's the whole question. I told you about dual agency. I told you it's legal in 23 states. But knowing it exists and actually catching it before it costs you, those are 2 completely different things. Most buyers find out about dual agency the same way that Nurse in Phoenix did, at the closing table, when they're already emotionally committed, when their furniture is on a truck, when walking away feels impossible. Ask this at the very first meeting, before you see a single house, before you get excited about anything. A good broker answers it directly. They tell you exactly what their relationship is with the listing agent and the seller. A broker who hedges, who says, well, it depends, or that's not really how it works, is answering your question without answering your question. That hedge just told you everything you need to know. Question 2. How many times has this property been listed in the last 3 years? And why did those deals fall through? This information is sitting in the MLS right now. Public record. Your broker can pull it up in 45 seconds. And yet, in 30 years, I can't count how many buyers had no idea their house had been listed 3, 4, 5 times before they signed. Why does a deal fall through? Sometimes financing. Sometimes the buyer's situation changed. Fine, those happen. But sometimes the inspection came back bad. Sometimes the appraisal came in low and the seller refused to budge. Sometimes a previous buyer found something and walked. Every one of those outcomes leaves a trail. And that trail is sitting in the listing history right now. If your broker hesitates when you ask this, if they say, oh, that doesn't really matter, stop, pull out your phone, go to Redfin, search the address yourself. It's right there. A house listed 4 times in 2 years is telling you something. Listen to it. Question 3. Write this one down. What would make you personally walk away from this deal if it were your money? I've asked audiences this, and they look at me like I just handed them something they weren't supposed to have. Honestly, you kind of did. This question knocks your broker completely off their script. Every broker has one. They're trained to handle objections, trained to manage hesitation, trained to keep momentum moving toward closing. This stops all of that cold, because now you're not asking them to do their job. You're asking them to be honest. Those are not the same thing. A good broker answers this without blinking. They'll tell you exactly what concerns them. The price per square foot, the school district trend, the foundation they notice walking the basement. A bad broker smiles and says, I don't see any reason to walk away from this one. That's not reassurance. That's a warning. Columbus, Ohio. School teacher, 31 years old, saved for 6 years, putting 10% down on a $175,000 home. She wrote these questions on a notepad, actual notepad, and brought it to the showing. She asked question 3 at the kitchen table. Her broker went quiet. 4 full seconds. I love that detail. 4 seconds. Then he said, honestly, the price per square foot is about 8% above what I would pay. She went back that afternoon and negotiated $14,000 off asking price. $14,000 from an 11-word question. And the broker still made his commission, so don't feel bad for him. Question 4. What did the last 3 comparable sales actually close at versus list price in this zip code? Not what Zillow says, not the estimate, not homes currently sitting on the market. What did they actually close at? Final number, signed and done. A broker who knows their market answers this immediately. Specific addresses, specific numbers, specific days on market. A broker who doesn't know gets vague. It varies. The market's complicated right now. Every home is different. Every home is different, sure. But closed sale prices are facts. Facts don't vary. If your broker can't tell you what 3 comparable homes closed at in the last 90 days, you don't have a market expert sitting next to you. You've got someone with a license and a good handshake. Question 5. This one. Pay attention. Who orders the inspection? And can I choose my own inspector independently? In 2023, the National Association of Realtors settled a lawsuit for $418 million. Say that number out loud for a second. $418 million. Parts of that lawsuit came down to exactly this: inspectors with relationships to brokers, referral arrangements, deals structured to protect the transaction, not the buyer. Your inspector works for you, not for the broker, not for the seller, not for the office that's used the same inspection company for 11 years because they don't kill deals. You have the right to hire your own inspector, independently, no referral, no relationship, someone whose only job is to find everything wrong with that house before you sign. Ask this question, and watch the answer carefully, because what I'm about to show you next, what happened to the buyers who skipped it, that's the part that still keeps me up at night. I want to tell you something about every buyer I ever watched get hurt. They weren't stupid, not one of them. Engineers, teachers, nurses, contractors, smart people with good jobs who had saved for years just to get to that closing table. What they were was trusting. And in this industry, trust without the right questions is the most expensive mistake you can make. Here's the pattern. Same thing, 30 years in a row. Buyer meets a broker who's likable, responsive, warm, shows up on time, brings coffee to the second showing, texts back in 10 minutes, and the buyer thinks, this person is on my side. But likability isn't loyalty. A broker who brings you coffee and a broker who tells you the truth when that truth costs them $10,000, those are not automatically the same person. The most dangerous brokers I ever dealt with were the charming ones, because charm buys silence, and silence at the wrong moment costs you everything. Here's something I still think about. Back in '94, 15 years into this business, buyers had nothing. No Zillow, no Redfin, no way to pull up a listing history on your phone, no way to check what the house 3 doors down actually sold for last spring. Brokers held every piece of information. You either trusted your broker completely or you bought blind. Today you have all of it. Every data point, every sale price, every listing history, right in your pocket. And buyers are still getting hurt, which tells me the problem was never information. It's emotional. Buying a home is terrifying. And when you're terrified, having a confident person standing next to you saying, this is the one, that feels like safety. It isn't safety, it's comfort. And those two things are not the same. Your broker's confidence doesn't mean the house is right. It means your broker is good at their job. That's it. I need to tell you about someone I knew personally. This one's hard for me to say. 20 years in the business. Good reputation. Someone I genuinely respected. He had a couple, both working, stretched to every single dollar of their budget at $268,000. That was their ceiling. They told him that clearly. 2 weeks before they made the offer, he'd run into the listing agent at an industry conference. Casual conversation. The listing agent let slip that the seller was motivated, that they'd take $251,000 and be grateful for it. He never told them. They offered $268,000. Seller accepted before noon. That broker knew the seller would take $17,000 less. He knew, and he said nothing, because his commission was calculated on the final sale price. That couple refinanced twice trying to stay in that house. In 2003, they sold it at a $6,000 loss. He retired comfortably. I watched that from 10 feet away. I've carried it ever since, and I'm telling you about it now because it wasn't some crook in a bad suit. It was someone I respected. That's what this industry does to people when the incentives are wrong. So here's what to listen for. If your broker has said any of these phrases, pay attention. This market moves fast. I've seen 3 other offers come in this week. You don't want to lose this one. Those 3 phrases show up in almost every deal I watched go wrong. They're pressure tools, designed to move you past your questions and toward the closing table. If your broker has already said any of them, stop. Not walk away, just stop. Before you go one more step, ask question 3. What would make you personally walk away from this deal if it were your money? And listen to that answer like your financial future depends on it, because it does. And before we get to the last part, I want to say this clearly. Good brokers exist. I've known hundreds of them. A good broker won't flinch at any of these 5 questions. A great broker answers question 3 before you even ask it, because they volunteered the concern the moment they saw it. That's the broker worth every dollar of that commission. The question is, Do you know which one is sitting across from you right now? You've got all 5 questions now. But here's the thing I need you to hear. And I mean really hear this. Knowing them isn't enough. When you ask them matters just as much as what you ask. Before you tour a single house, before you walk through one door, you sit down with your broker and you ask all 5. Not at the offer stage. Not after you've already fallen in love with the kitchen. Before any of that happens. Because the moment you see a house you want, you're compromised. Your judgment shifts. Your questions get softer. Your instincts get quieter. You start finding reasons it'll be fine. Ask them when you've got nothing to lose yet. That's when you'll hear the real answers. Now, here's what a real answer actually sounds like. A good broker gives you specifics, addresses, numbers, actual closed prices, a direct answer to what would make them walk away, concrete, no hesitation. A broker who's deflecting gives you reassurance instead. Don't worry about that. That's not really how it works. Trust me on this one. Reassurance is not an answer. Every time a broker answers your question with a feeling instead of a fact, they just failed the question. Remember that. Last transaction I personally supervised before I retired. Couple in their early 30s, both teachers, looking at a $310,000 home outside Nashville. They came in with these 5 questions on a notepad. Actual paper. Actual pen. I remember thinking, good, these two get it. Their broker answered 4 of them clean, solid, specific numbers. I was impressed. Then they got to question 5. The inspection question. He paused, then said, "We usually use a guy the office has worked with for years." They thanked him, went home, hired their own inspector independently. That inspector found a foundation crack. Same house had been listed once before. A previous inspector had flagged that exact crack. That deal fell. So here's where I need you to be honest with yourself. How many of these 5 questions had you already asked your broker before you watched this? If your answer is 0, that's not a failure. That's just information. You know exactly what to do before your next showing. If your answer is 5, you're already ahead of 90% of first-time buyers I worked with over 30 years. Somewhere in the middle, you know which ones you still need to ask. I spent 30 years inside this industry. I watched good people get hurt by bad timing and unanswered questions. People who deserve better. People who just didn't know what to ask. Now you do. Don't walk into that